rolling again. Take it away.
What is your name?
My name is Hazel Edith Mildred Catherine Margaret Brenna Gant.
How did you come upon all those names?
As a little girl, I asked my mother, when I found out no one else had that many names, why did you give me all these names? She said, the nurses, different ones said, name her after me, name her after me. She said, I didn't want to hurt their feelings, so I put them all together. And that's why I have the names that I have. But it feels good.
How did you and your family come to live in Lancaster? When did you come here?
My parents moved from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to Lancaster. I was 4 years old. My father's job was changing, and they asked him to move with them.
Where did your family come from before
Wait,
Harrisburg?
actually, can we redo that question? Because there wasn't the repeat of, like, we moved to Lancaster when it was just the answer.
Oh, I thought she did that.
It's,
Hmm?
And she explained the last time too that my father was a chef or something, cook or.
Yeah, that's
And
when
then-
it
and
stopped.
maybe I misheard it. It didn't
Oh,
sound
okay.
like the
Yeah,
end.
he's-
I really thought she did. Okay.
You could be right. I might have
Now,
just
this
tuned
is
out for a
about a
moment.
family. Okay. When did you and your family move to Lancaster or come to Lancaster? And how old were you when you came here?
I was 4 years
So
old.
that's when it started. That was
Okay.
yes.
But you
When I was 4 years old, we moved to Lancaster.
you have to say, when my family moved here when I was 4 years old. Start at that. So you're answering.
My family moved here to Lancaster when I was 4 years old.
And tell them about.
Where did your family come from? My family came from.
My family came originally from Maryland to Harrisburg and then to Lancaster. Is that?
Where did you live when you came to Lancaster? Like, where have you lived in your lifetime of Lancaster?
I lived at Mercer Avenue when we came to Lancaster. I moved from Mercer Avenue to North Street. From North Street, we moved to Atlantic Avenue.
Who were your neighbors when you were growing up in North Street and Atlantic Avenue? My neighbors were,
How about Mercer Avenue? Yeah.
who were your neighbors?
My neighbors were the Dorseys, Walter Dorsey, Gladys Dorsey, and their family, Mrs. Clark at Mercer Avenue. When we moved to North Street, our neighbors were Mrs. Helen Hardwick and her family.
Who were your running buddies? Who were your friends, the people that you played with or did your interactions
They're
with?
all gone now.
My friends were.
My friends were Shirley Johnson, Virginia Waters, Mary Bird, Norma Jason, Marion Jason.
What schools did you attend?
I attended Duke Street School, which is now a high-rise. I attended George Washington School, I attended East Junior High School. I attended McCaskey High School.
How far did you go in McCaskey?
I went to the 11th grade.
What were some of the interests that you had in school? What were your favorite subjects?
English, my favorite subject was English, spelling. I was in a spelling bee and I came out the winner.
What churches did you attend?
I attended Bethel AME Church. I attended St. Paul's Church of God in Christ. And that
What businesses, stores were near you as you were, growing up? And can you recap what stores were, where they were?
as I was growing up
I'm
on
sorry.
North Street.
Sorry, start over because I was talking over top of you. When you were growing up,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you go ahead. I was talking over you.
Okay.
So-
Okay.
Start over. As I was.
The stores in our neighborhood, I went to Klavansky's store. At that time, that was the only store I went to in our neighborhood. As we grew older, I don't remember the stores, but there were other stores. I do remember at Klavansky's, my mother could run a bill. I mentioned that because she wrote a note not to give us candy or whatever we asked for on her bill. I also remember, this is not a store, but at that time, the rent man came to our house for the rent. I remember my mother asking the rent man to fix a wall. I remember he said okay. It didn't happen right away. I do remember the next time he came for the rent, he counted the money. I remember him saying, "Miss Gant, not all here." And I was just not even in my teens, but I remember my mother saying, "Look at the wall." I mentioned that because I feel I get some of her strength myself. I remember her saying that. I appreciate what she did. I didn't know then, I didn't know what impact it would make on me, but I do now.
When you shopped at Kavansky's, could you buy all of your foods there, or did you buy your meats and everything there? What did you buy?
We bought meats. At that time, I remember we didn't have to buy bread at the store. I remember we didn't have to buy milk at the store. I remember that we didn't have electric and we did not have to buy ice. I remember the iceman coming to the door. I remember the milkman delivering milk. I remember bond bread bakers. And I would like to mention when the bond bread man came, knocked on our door, before my mother could answer, he walked in. And as if it was today, I can see her saying, "You don't walk in my house." First, I remember him saying, "Hey, mother." My mother said, "I am not your mother. I am Mrs. Gant. Don't walk in." And I remember that.
kind of activities were you involved in, like after school? Like, did you go anywhere after school? Did you, was it a recreation play? What did you do after school? Just play? What did you do?
Well, in my early years, I remember we just stayed around the house
After school.
after school. There was, I remember my mother didn't allow us to go too far. I made the mistake of wanting to go with two of my girlfriends downtown. Mama said, "Do you have money?" I said, "No, I don't." I remember this. I'm glad she did not let me go because those two girls got caught stealing. I would have been one of those girls had my mother been strict, not been strict. But we jumped, I remember we jumped rope. We jumped rope. The girls jumped rope, and I remember the boys had marbles. I don't see them anymore. But the boys would play marbles, and the girls, I remember we jumped rope. And that was our activities. And I was fine. I didn't know anything else.
What did you do in the summer when school was out? What did you do all day long while school was out? Now repeat that back to me. In the summer,
In the summer, I remember we played, one thing, we had dolls. The girls had doll babies. I remember that. I remember we just played outside. The house we lived in, I can remember we had a backyard. And Daddy put things in the yard for us to amuse ourselves. I say again, I remember my mother was not didn't allow us a lot of liberty. She wanted us to be safe. I couldn't see it that way at first, but
you had a special relationship with your mother. You and your mother were very close.
I think we were. I paid attention to things that ordinarily the kids didn't. I realized that my mother went through a lot. Losing a child, I remember her being told. I remember her telling me she'd lost two children prior to my birth, way before my birth. And I just like to talk to her.
When you talk with your mother, what kind of things did you talk about? Just briefly, you don't have to go into detail. What kind of things did
I remember her telling me things that were right and things that weren't. And I didn't realize it then, but it helped me to grow. And I just remember, my mother was pretty strict in her rules. And if I may state this, I had two sisters that didn't pay attention to what she said because of their age. And I remember they were to do dishes, but they went to a dance. And I was still up because I knew that they had done wrong. My mother waited for them, and I remember when they walked in the back door, she said, "The dishes are waiting for you." And I remember them saying, "We'll do them in the morning." I remember my mother saying, "The dishes are waiting for you." And I remember that. I wasn't very old, but I remember they had to do the dishes before. I state that. I say so much about how my mother was because children weren't. They had their own way even then. And I thank God for her strictness. I didn't always like it, but I thank her for what she had done.
Where did you go? This might be sort of repetitious of what we were just asked, but since it's on here. Where did you go for recreation? There were local parks or community centers or swimming areas. Were there any such things
It-
Where did you go for recreation? For recreation, uh,
In in my later years, we had the community center. We could go there. And I don't remember where it was located. I think it was located on Duke Street, but I don't want to say for sure. But most of our activities, I just was around home.
as a teenager, I worked.
As a teenager, I didn't work.
What difficulties did you have getting employment as an adult, if you had any? Were there any experiences that you had in trying to get a job that you found you had difficulties, the barriers? Now start over with the question, seeking employment, I did or did not have.
In seeking employment, I didn't have a problem getting the employment. My problem was, and I remember very well, that after the employment, I would be doing my job, but, and I have to say this, it had to do because I was the only one of color at that job, and they thought they should tell me how to do it. I was taught, I was trained, and I did not accept the side workers telling me what to do. I had a lot of experiences. I don't think that you want me to go through all of it, but this, I'll name one thing, for instance. I was short order cook. As I got older, I got jobs. Short order cook at Miller's Smorgasbord. I took the waitress's order. The waitress came back. I didn't order this. I said, yes, you did. My co-worker said, what are you doing? You're trying to mess with Miss Hazel. I showed him. He said, I don't even know what it is, he said. But I say that because I know she was trying to make me look bad. I would not let that happen. Another instance, I worked, my boss came in. I had put my sandwich bread down for my sandwiches. He took a spatula, so we don't do sandwiches with holes in the bread. I said, Tom, I know what I'm doing. Now get out of my kitchen. I say that not to brag on myself, but and it is for the future people. I knew what I was doing or I wouldn't have been there. The waitress said, he's your boss. He is not my words were, he is not my God. I know what I'm doing. Now leave me alone.
What type of jobs did you have?
I had several jobs. I worked, I helped to open Bob Evans' restaurant. There I was one of the first hostesses. There were two of us. I was the only one of color. I had a problem there. I remember the waitresses that were training to be waitresses served our breakfast. I remember the girl coming out, setting the toast bread down. I said, what is this? That's your toast bread. I said, it was black as your pants. I said, I'm not eating this. I remember her going back. I remember her saying, he said, somebody got to eat it. And I remember I said, then you take it back and tell him Hazel said, eat it. But I enjoyed the job there. I was trained, and I encountered several problems. I had a guest come in to sign in. and started to leave. And I said to him, you have 2 children. I would stay if I were you, because if your name is called, and I mentioned that to him, you'll miss your table. The man left. I saw he was trying to make trouble for me, because when he returned, I said, your name was called, you have to re-sign. My boss was standing there beside me, and I said to him, the man said, she told me I couldn't leave. I said, Tom, I did not say that. I suggested to him, on consideration of the children, I remember my boss saying, don't worry about it. I've been catching hell all morning. But I mentioned that because so many times in my jobs, and I knew what I was doing. I'm not perfect. I know that. But I knew what I was doing, or I wouldn't have been there. And I had to make it clear to them, I wasn't taking what they thought they were putting on me.
I want to back up just a little bit. You were one of 10 children.
Pardon?
Your mother had 10 children.
Yes.
You were one of 10 children. Did you have any children, and if not, did you surrogate, or your surrogate mother for any children? I always heard that you raised some children.
I did.
Now I need you to, did you have any children?
No.
Okay, okay, I didn't have any children, but.
I didn't have any biological children. I consider myself having children from my heart. In a relationship, I encountered being able to take care of Wanda McKinney. I remember her mother didn't want her anymore because she was leaving. I was asked to take Wanda. I took Wanda. I raised Wanda. And I get thanks, even today, I still get thanks from her through all those years. It meant a lot to me because to have a baby, biological, I always said it doesn't make a woman a mother. And I repeat it. It's how you raise your child. I didn't allow her to be rude to me or disrespectful, but I also was instrumental in her upbringing.
What were some of the major news stories that impacted you while you were living in 7th Ward? Were there any major news happenings, whether it was about 7th Ward or worldwide? Are there any major news stories?
I'll be honest with you, I can't remember.
Any major?
Not really.
How did you feel about the 7th Ward? We hear so many bad things about the ward. What did you think, and how did you feel about the 7th Ward when you were growing up?
I never, I would hear, but
I felt good or bad about 7th Ward. Start answering,
I didn't feel bad about living in the 7th Ward. Because I remember that families looked out for one another. I remember there were incidents, fights, but I myself, that didn't affect me in the 7th Ward. I really had no problem with that.
Who were some of the leaders or role models in the community when you were a teenager and a young adult?
I think of Miss Eureka Cook. She, no.
I need you to say my role models. Or
I would say my role model was Miss Eureka Cook. That's the only one I can think of right now.
How was she a role model to you? In what way?
She would, I remember her trying to help the young people. And I remember that everyone didn't appeal to her way because she had a strict way. But I remember I could accept it because my mother was strict. I was used to that. And I always say, to this day, it didn't hurt me, it didn't kill me. And I thank them for that.
You have a special relationship with Buddy Glover today as an adult and as a senior. How did that come about? What is your relationship with him?
That's,
Buddy and Plutie, there are some young men that really seem to.
I feel that with Buddy, he saw how I would relate to other people. I like greeting people. I like giving a smile. Buddy has mentioned that from time to time. And I think that helped to grow in our relationship. I call Plutie, as most people say, I call Ray, Ray. With Ray, and it's several years ago, I knew him because of a connection with Wanda and her father. One day he said, I'm going to call you, he said, I'm going to adopt you as my other mom. And that was, I feel, and I still feel special.
Describe, best you can, the 7th Ward, what it looked like, the houses, the community. If you were just trying to paint a picture in someone's head who had never seen the 7th Ward, at the time when you were coming up, because we know there's been a lot of changes since then. What did the 7th Ward look like?
Well, I can remember some houses were empty. I remember Atlantic Avenue at one time, people didn't really take care of what they did have. And I remember when we lived on North Street, we had to scrub and clean our porches. I remember our porch was connected with another one, and I remember my mother instructing us to clean that. But I just remember some houses were bad and some weren't. I can only say it depended on the people. But again, I'll say, my mother, I remember my mother saying we should help neighbors.
What was your perception? What was your idea of what was good about the 7th Ward and what was bad about the 7th Ward? What was good? What was bad? Can you start with that? I felt.
I can only say what was good and what was bad. There were some good people. There were some bad people. And as youngsters, I can remember some were bullies. And I can say I thank God I didn't get into that because, and I'll go back again, it's what my mother taught me. And I didn't realize it, I did not realize it at the time, that it helped me.
What were the bad sections?
I don't really remember what a bad section was.
What doctors and dentists did you attend, say, before the 1980s, all through your childhood up to, what doctors?
The doctors that I encountered were Dr. Travis, Dr. Starrett. I remember when Dr. Starrett was there on Duke Street, where next to the telephone place. I remember I had a sister that worked for them, And as a dentist, I had Dr. Travis, and they were very good. I appreciated them.
They were in the community?
Yes, yes. On South Duke Street.
What hospitals were available at that time?
At that time, I remember my mother went to Lancaster General Hospital if she had to go, or if the kids had to go. That's the only one that I remember.
What nightclubs, dance halls were available at that time, whether you went to them or not? What was available, nightclubs or dance halls? And I know you know to dance. I'm going to ask you too then, where did you learn to dance? But what nightclubs and dance halls, what was available at that time? I need you to start from at
When
that
I
time,
started, or
at
just
when I was coming up, or whenever you started, however you want to start it.
when I was coming up, there was Elks Home. There was John Sturgis Hotel. That's where I would say nightclubs. And eventually, when I was old enough, I attended the nightclubs, Elks Home, at John Sturgis, and I was one that when the music played, I could not sit still. And I have to tell this story of how some people think a lot of themselves, but I took it liberty. I had seen a man dancing, and I knew he could dance, and I loved to dance. I'd love to dance today. And I went to him and said, "Why are you sitting here with this good music playing? Come on and dance. You're too old for me." And I said, "I did not ask you to go to bed. I said, let's dance." And I walked away. I remember when Teddy Rich played. I would love to hear his music, but I say that because I almost would get up on the stage with him. And I say again, I love to dance, and I still love to dance. I have people that I've had church people reprimand me because, oh yes, if I hear jazz music, I'll move to the tune. Well, they don't think I should because I'm going to church. It doesn't change my spiritual life, but I adhere to, and I've had some band players, thank you. And I always ask God to let me be a blessing to someone else, give someone else a chance to smile. And I feel that that's one of them.
Can we ask that question? Because be careful not to touch your microphone, because when you hit that, it's.
What did I?
But
She touched it?
the rest, yes, she was touching her chest
you
and
went
the
Me?
microphone.
You went like this, yes, and then the microphone is up there. Okay.
So most of it was still good, but if we just ask the question again, and
Oh,
That's all right.
it's okay.
Sorry.
Everybody does it. It's because you just don't think about it. Don't worry.
We're not paying you. Oh, we got time.
I'm being paid because it's an honor for me to be here
It's
doing
an honor
this.
for us to have you, too.
Money isn't everything. I have to say that. Money isn't everything.
We're not on tape yet. Now, he's going to start, but I'm going to start by asking you, what was my question? Because that's all. What dance halls, I asked you about, the question is about her loving to dance.
Loving to dance.
Yeah. You've always loved to dance. How did you come about, dancing? Did you learn to dance? How did you, what's your thing about dance?
I have to say, I don't even know how I got into dancing because my mother didn't do it at home. She would move to the music. Remember my mother had a piano, but the outgoing dancing, I really don't know how I got started. I think going to the clubs and the rhythm, it just started me to moving.
Now, you asked the man to dance, let's go there, and he wouldn't get up.
I had seen this man dancing. I knew he could dance good. And he was sitting at the bar. And I went over and I said, how can you sit here with this good music playing? Let's dance. You're too old for me. I said, I did not ask you to go to bed. I said, let's dance. And I walked away. And danced by myself. I didn't need a partner. I was glad to have a partner, and one man sat down, he said, I can't dance with you. He said, you can dance too good.
You mentioned also about the fact that people commented on church.
About you should, yes. You
The-
comment about how people criticize you, about some people criticize you for dancing in church.
Oh,
Go back to that.
even today yet, there are people in church that will criticize me because they've seen me down maybe at Ben's Park or wherever I hear the music. I love to dance, and I don't feel that it's taken anything from me because I go to church. And I'm living proof of that my own self because God uses me. And the ones that criticized me, I feel they were just mad because they couldn't dance.
You mentioned one time about having a stint with alcohol, and you changed from that. Could you just briefly give us that about? You don't have to go into a lot of detail, but about the car and whatnot. So
I
well, I want you to start with. At one time, I used to have an alcohol or a drinking problem.
At one time, I developed an alcohol problem. I like to drink, but I also noticed that 3 or 4 of us girls would be sitting at the bar, and one would be expressing the trouble she was having in her relationship. They listened, but as soon as that person left the bar, they talked about them. And I was having difficulties in some things. And I thought, they won't do that to me. And I started drinking. And I drank my share. I'm not proud of it, but I'm proud of this. Eventually, I realized that I didn't want to drink anymore. Oh, God, thank you. And I tried to stop drinking. I didn't go to the bars. But then I would sneak to the State store down on Duke Street and get a bottle. One night I sat on my sofa as I'm sitting here, and I said, God, you have to take this. I can't take it anymore. Then I also would go to Fairmount House. I would say I'm going to the store to myself, past the store. After I talked to God that night, the next day I had none of those desires. I know He had cleaned me up. He brought me to where I am now. And I will say to anybody, if He did it for me, He can do it for you. I've expressed that to several people, and they thanked me. But I said, thank God. I thank God. And I say I thank God for all that I am today. I couldn't have made it without Him. Whew, thank you, Jesus.
Well, just you can feel free to talk because I know you've been somewhat reserved, but on our relationship, okay? Can you hear me, Miss Hazel?
On the relationship you had with Buddy.
Uh-huh.
The real link between us happened one day downtown
What was the real link between the two of you? It happened downtown
with the police.
with the police, you and Buddy.
Oh, He got to help me on that. I don't remember.
You remember when they approached me?
Yes,
That was the link.
yes.
But you can
I-
feel free to share it.
Let me say this. I want you to start out and saying, in my association with Buddy, because we'd already addressed that before, we can put that together. So just say, in my relationship with Buddy, it came about special because of
in my relationship with Buddy, I was working at Christmas Addicts, and I had left there and came up Queen Street, got to the square, I saw Buddy walking back and forth, I saw the cop. When I got there, so I kept walking over it to the square, I heard the cop say, "You're a suspect." I said, "Suspect for what?" Oh, I could not let that go by. And Buddy said, he said, "You do this to me all the time." And just then a police car drove up, pulled up, cruiser pulled up, and the cop got out, and he looked and said to the other cop, "What are you doing? I know this man." But I know that when I left Christmas Addicts, I was supposed to be there for that. Because and I see that was another thing where prejudice, and that was racism. But all they were looking for was a tall black man. They didn't know. They were looking for a tall black man. Buddy was the first one that came along. And he's going to tell him, "You're a suspect." And I repeat, I got in his face. Suspect for what? And when I learned that I'm glad Buddy thought of that, because there's so many things that I have experienced that some I forget. But I'm glad that he did. I'm glad that he brought that out.
You walk around downtown a lot. What drives you to do that? What do you get out of that?
I didn't realize it at first, but I know now and I feel God is using me as his vessel to reach other people. I have had the experience, I can be home and think I'm going to stay in today, and almost did it. It will hit me in my spirit, go out. And in that process, several times, I've met people. I'm one for complimenting people. And one day on Duke Street, a young man was in front of me, and I said, "Young man, your haircut looks great." He turned around, "Thank you." And I said, "Look at you." He said, "Lady, I thank you." He said he had difficulty, whatever his case was. I am so glad that I don't hesitate to compliment people. I have had the experience that I'll say to someone, I don't have to know them, "Your dress looks nice. Your hair looks nice." I wanted to compliment a woman about her blouse, and the man evidently thought I wanted to ask for something. I said, "I don't want anything from you. I want to compliment her blouse." She said, "Thank you." But I'm all over, as people tell me, you're all over the city. I say again, that's God. And I also tell a lot of people that want to complain to me. One man said, "God knows what I need. He knows what I want." I said to the man, "Ask him." He knows what I said. When you go to the store, this is what I said to this one man. If you don't see a product that you want, don't you ask someone? Well, yeah, they're not better than God. And I encourage, especially young people. I've had it said to me at another time. There's one woman I see that she never says anything, but she'll say to me, "I don't feel right in my day unless I see you." And again, I repeat, it's God. And I had a statement made from church people. She's all over, she's sneaking. I want to repeat this story. I said, if I was sneaking to meet a man, I can hardly walk, I have a problem walking, and I'm going to meet him, then when I got there, he'd have to let me rest before we did anything. I'm not sneaking.
On my next birthday, I will be. On my next birthday, I will be. On my next birthday.
On my next birthday, October 14th, 93.
Um, what did you like least about living in the 7th Ward? Was there any?
I really don't have any. We lived a life. I lived the life of what was there.
Okay.
I
I need you to say what I liked least about the 7th
Oh,
Ward was,
oh.
and what I liked best was this.
Oh.
So, make it brief. You can make it brief. If you don't have anything, just say that.
what I had liked least or what I liked the best. I can't say anything. I liked the 7th Ward.
What impact did the education system have on you? Did it hold you back from anything, or did it push you forward with anything, or was it just education?
My education, even in school, and I think about it, I have to admit, I didn't allow them to push me then. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I had instances where the teacher would try to intimidate me because of my color. I did not accept that. I got in trouble.
What kind of ways did they try to intimidate you? Can you
Things that we
expound?
were supposed to do in I'll say gym classes. I, along with the other students, were told, jump this, jump that. I didn't. I witnessed one of my schoolmates get an injured leg following what they said. And I didn't do it. But I liked school. I really didn't have a problem in school. I just,
So you didn't really experience any outright racism in school. It's just being told things.
I'll name this incident at McCaskey, and I feel, even that day I felt it. It was where they had groups sectioned off. We were to do certain exercises or a dance or something, and there was 5 of us. Lexa, there was 5 of us. I overheard the teacher say when it was our turn, watch watch this stuff over here. And it was in a very unmannerly way. I told the other girls, I'm not doing it. And I told them how she said it. I got in trouble.
What kind of trouble did you get in?
I got sent home.
Were you involved in any social, fraternal organizations, Elks, Eastern Stars, or were you? What fraternal organizations were you a member, if any?
I was a member of the Elks, the Daughter Elks, at one time. I got into that through my sister, yeah, but I was a member of the Elks Club at South Duke and North Street.
What activities have you engaged in church? What have you taken part of, other than being a worshiper? What kind of work, because you're a worker, what kind of works did you do in church?
I'm a head usher.
In church, that's okay.
In church, I am one of the ushers, head usher, the usher board. I have been usher for quite a few years. I became in church, I became an usher at Farnham Street, and we moved to the present. I still engage as an usher. I enjoy that. I enjoy the ushering because it's greeting people. And I love greeting people or making them feel good.
Last question. Who do you want people to say Miss Hazel Grant was? Who do you want people to say you were, or, you know, what do you want people to remember about you? Just briefly, as much as you.
I would like for people to remember about me. I try to be nice to people. I try to understand people. And I would like for them to remember, as some know, I will speak out and speak up for people.
Amen. Okay.
That's it.
That's it. Very good.